You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Heard exclusively on RoadrunnerRecords.com/Skull Sessions. And now, here is your host, Bob Nalbandian.
I just love that riff. That, of course, is the mighty Exodus with a track, Bonded by Blood, which, of course, is from their brand new CD, Let There Be Blood, that features re-recorded versions of the ultimate classic thrash metal album, Bonded by Blood. Be sure to check it out. That CD is available now, and you guessed it, man. We got Exodus guitarist Gary Holt joining us on this episode, as well as Ron Quintana, the legendary Ron Quintana. Many of you may know from KUSF's Rampage radio show. You can check it out at KUSF.org. Check out the Rampage radio show. He's been doing it for over 20 years now. And of course, many of you know Ron Quintana as the editor for the classic metal fanzine. In fact, what I consider the most influential metal fanzine of all time, that is Metal Mania. He is going to be joining us along with our third guest, William Howell. Many of you know as DJ Will, a very popular DJ on the LA metal circuit. Will can also be found at knec.com. He does the show The Vault every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Will was also a A&R person, one of the original A&R people at Metal Blade back in the day when the label first started out. In fact, Will compiled many of those classic Metal Massacre series albums. And Will also went on to Capitol Records, where he was working with Exodus. In fact, both Will and Ron share a very extensive relationship with Gary Holt and Exodus, which they will be talking about throughout this podcast. And I will tell you right now, I know we've done some great episodes in the past, but this, I gotta say, bar none, is the best Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Whether you like thrash metal, whether you like Exodus, believe me guys, you will be thoroughly entertained on this episode. Gary Holt tells some hilarious stories. In fact, this is what I've always been trying to capture with the Shockwave Skull Sessions. I wasn't sure how it would work with three guests. Of course, on our last episode, which got a lot of great response, that was the Metallica Death Magnetic episode. We had three guests on that as well. And we're doing it again. And it's funny because none of this was pre-planned. It's just a free-for-all conversation. The only thing I told the guys is we're going to be talking about the classic days of thrash metal, and basically anything goes. And believe me, guys, anything went on this episode. It is a fantastic episode. You will thoroughly enjoy it. So we are going to get right to it without further ado. But first, I do got to mention a few things. For one, I got to mention our great sponsors, Peavey Electronics. You be sure to check them out at peavey.com. That, of course, is PEAVEY.com. We are still running the contest to give away that brand new Peavey bass guitar. That is the Zodiac DE bass guitar, the David Ellefson model, a classic guitar. We are still going about it, people, and we haven't received enough responses, guys. So I'm going to be really pissed if I have to give this guitar away and you guys don't get at least 5 of these riffs correct. So go back and listen to the previous episode. I believe it was like episode 10 or 11, the Peavey bass guitar contest. You could go to the Shockwave Skull Sessions site, the official Shockwave Skull Sessions site. That, of course, is RoadrunnerRecords.com/Skull Sessions. You can also hear that same contest on the latest Shockwave's Hard Radio podcast. That, of course, is available on hardradio.com. The latest episode is the Independent Metal Music episode. That is podcast number 35. at the beginning of that episode, I go through those same riffs. So either way you go about it, guys, listen to them, identify them, and email me at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. But you got to get them in quick, guys, because we got less than a month. As soon as the following Shockwaves Hard Radio podcast number 36 gets posted, that is when we're going to identify the winners. So I got to get all your votes within the next few weeks. So send them in. Once again, email me at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. Well, shit, I guess I said my piece, man. It is time to get to this incredible conversation. Once again, this is Gary Holt from Exodus, along with Ron Quintana, William Howell, and myself, talking about the classic thrash metal days of the early 80s. Enjoy. So we got a kind of a follow-up thrash metal podcast. We've got three major players in the thrash metal scene. We got Ron Quintana, one of the original Bay Area bangers and the editor of the classic Metal Mania fanzine and magazine, which started back in what? That was 1981, your first issue, Ron?
August of 1981.
Wow, and I still have that issue with Lemmy on the cover, right?
Excellent.
In fact, Ron was probably my biggest inspiration, without question, to start my own fanzine, Headbanger, which started shortly after Ron's Metal Mania. If it wasn't for Metal Mania, there'd be no Headbanger, Ron. Do you realize that?
Oh, my God.
You started it all, my friend. Ron, by the way, is still in Northern California, living up in kind of around the Bay Area, I would say. And we got William Howell, a.k.a. DJ Will, as a lot of people know him as, in Los Angeles. What's going on there, Will?
You say that, Big Bad Bob.
Good to talk to you again, my friend. We got Will. Of course, people know DJ Will. Very famous now in the LA nightclub scene as a metal DJ. In fact, you recently did something at the Playboy Mansion, I read, huh?
Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. I opened up for Sebastian Bach, but I did what I could.
You're like the Kim Kardashian of heavy metal.
I like that. You're going to have to use that one, Will. The Kim Kardashian of heavy metal.
Except your ass ain't near as big as that, bitches.
So that third voice we got there, many of you might be familiar with, the infamous Gary Holt from Exodus. What's up there, Gary?
What's happening? How you doing?
All right. So, as a lot of people know, Exodus just put out, or I guess it's coming out in a couple weeks. October 28th is the release date, right, Gary?
Something like that. I don't know. You just told me when the release date is, so now I know. So
that's what I was told anyway. The new Exodus album, Let There Be Blood, a classic album. It features re-recorded versions, I guess you could say modernized versions, of the classic 1985 debut release, Bonded by Blood. Excellent CD, Gary. I actually got a few songs from Hannah, and sounds incredible, man. You produced the CD yourself, huh?
Yeah. We sent it over to Sneap, Andy Sneap, to mix it, and we did a lot of it, through the marvel of high-speed internet. Whereas Rob did his vocals in New York, and then just emailed me files back and forth, and it came out really killer. I mean, if anything, it's definitely a testimony to how great those songs are, because we didn't change anything. I mean, we play them the way we've been playing them for years. They're tuned down a little bit, but the fast stuff's faster. Sometimes the slow stuff's a little slower, and if you had never heard these songs before, you certainly wouldn't date them to 1985, because they still stand up,
Absolutely. Have you guys had a chance to hear the CD, Ron or Will?
I haven't. Is Lee on that?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Now, I personally have not. I had heard about this re-recording, so it's interesting. Gary, you think you might get a little flack for doing a re-recording of that legendary CD?
Well, I have from some people, and I just tell people, I have a couple of different attitudes about it, none of them bad, although I'm usually full of bad attitudes. One is if people, some people they'd come up to me this album's perfection, you don't mess with it, and hey, that's a compliment, if anybody loves it that much that it's untouchable. But, I always just tell them, look, I'm not making the original vanish. It's not going to disappear into thin air when this one comes out. By all means, continue to listen to it. I'd never want anybody to stop. But, I tell them, look, no one would have a problem with us recording them live. We just did this. It's like, a tribute, paying tribute to Paul and paying tribute to these songs. And a lot of people have come around, and everybody who's heard it thinks it's amazing. It's absolutely crushing, and as a guitar player, I always want to improve on the sound quality, because, that's the one thing that has aged to me is the production of the original. But, we were kids and technology hadn't caught up then, nor had budgets, we actually, I think, recorded this one in less time than the original, but, technology's there to make it a lot better sounding.
Well, that's the key point, and I will confirm, Ron and Will and everybody listening, this CD is absolutely amazing. Just like you said, Gary, some of these original recordings from these bands were done so poorly back in the day, and it'd be great to have just a killer sounding version of these records, and that's what this is, Let There Be Blood. I mean, Rob Duke sounds amazing. He pays excellent tribute to Paul Bailoff.
Totally. I mean, he was so he was nervous because he knew he'd be under a microscope more than anybody, singing, Paul Bailoff songs, the legend, but I told him, look, just be yourself, pay homage to Paul without becoming a caricature, don't sound like you're just copying him, but, let him come to you, and he did, and I think it's amazing. It sounds fucking crushing, and maybe our audience has gotten really young now, so maybe through this some kids might actually discover the original.
Well, what I liked about this too is you tell people that this is a re-recording of the original classic, and you let it be known. It's not like those Ozzy records that Sharon reissued, which was just blasphemous by replacing Bob. She wiped
the memory of some of the players off the map forever. So.
Yeah, that is just wrong. I mean, when bands do stuff like that, or managers or whatever, that is just completely wrong. Yeah.
I'll never do that. I mean, we changed the title because, this isn't Bonded by Blood. Same songs, but, why people say, why you change the title? Because I'm not replacing Bonded. I don't want to call it Bonded. It's not Bonded by Blood. That's the other one, This is just a companion record. And, if people want to, listen to hear these songs, the way we play them now, this is the one. If you're feeling a little nostalgic, listen to it. The other's always going to be our best album we ever did anyway, so I'm not competing with that, That's the one thing I've learned years ago is, don't try to compete with Bonded by Blood because you're just going to lose anyway.
Hey, Gary, did you throw in Impaler or anything else from around that era?
There's a little song on there, but it's not on the advanced promo. It's called Hell's Breath.
Oh, Hell's Breath, okay.
Yeah, it came out killer, too. It's so awesome. And,
no Whipping Queen, huh?
No, not Whipping Queen, me and Tom did jam on it in the studio because we finished the drums and we still had some studio time left. And so we were like, what are we going to do with this time here? And I said, let's track Hell's Breath, And we almost did Dying by His Hand and shit. And the first section on Hell's Breath came out slightly different just because I hadn't listened to it for 20-something years. And I was going totally by memory. But then when I had to sit down with some MP3s or some live shows and decipher, my own lyrics from Paul's live takes, I noticed that the arrangement on the solo is a little different, but it's nothing drastic.
And Paul would occasionally forget lyrics.
He'd just go, die, fucking die.
Oh, that must have been hell trying to decipher.
On Impaler, we'd do that one sometimes live, in '97, and he would sing a whole verse in the fast middle section. He would go, time to die, time to die, time to fucking die, because he forgot the lyrics. It was very cool.
Oh, that's great.
He could put that shit off, though,
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I should kind of mention a little bit of the history. Obviously, both Ron and Will have quite a bit of history with Gary and Exodus. We'll start with DJ Will. Many people know DJ Will from KNAC.com. He does a great show called The Vault every Sunday mornings. What is it, 10 a.m. to?
10 a.m. to 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, give or take, if I don't get interrupted by the football season.
And that's at KNAC.com. And the one thing I totally admire, dude, is you always play the classic stuff that we all grew up on. You're not at all affected by, the radio standards of what to play. And in fact, even when you did the Playboy Party, I had read an email list of songs you played, and you were playing like bands like Warning from France and Accept. And I would figure you would just play like the typical 80s metal at the Playboy Mansion, but you were digging deep into the catalog, man. I totally admire that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Rocking all that silicone.
And of course, DJ Will also worked at Metal Blade as an A&R person in the late 80s, and then went on to Capitol as an A&R person, and you were the one responsible for signing Exodus to Capitol.
Well, managing/babysitting, and it was a learning experience all around.
Well, you want to bring us back to that era? Exodus, one of the classic thrash metal bands, and at this point, of course, Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer have already been signed to major labels, and Exodus were kind of the last of the underground pioneers, and still to this day kind of are. Kind of explain how they came into Capitol Records there in that experience, if you don't mind.
Well, with Capitol, it's like, former A&R rep at Capitol, Rachel Matthews, they had tried to, acquire us for a while, but by the time we finally were acquired and, signed to Capitol, everything went south. New head of A&R, new president, everybody was gone. Will was the only person who remained on my protected list. He's the only one who wasn't going to wake up with a snake, with a viper in their bed or something. Because I don't have very many fond memories from my Capitol years, other than my friend Will. Tyler Hahn just was a fun guy to hang out with too, though.
Appreciate that, Gary. One thing about going into that world, for me, Bob and Ron, for the listeners, I started at Metal Blade really right out of high school. I had met Brian through basically tape trading and going to the shows. After like 5 years stint with Metal Blade, I moved on to Capitol, and really the whole regime that was there, they're really deep down inside were not into the rock and metal, even though Great White and Iron Maiden bands, Wasp, these types of bands were on the label. And then you had Megadeth and Exodus, and what a perfect opportunity to wave that flag of, hey, if these bands are on the label, let's get the support going. I mean, it was a tough go at it, trying to get all the different departments on point, getting them excited about these releases. Impact is Imminent was kind of just coming out when I started, and then everything led up to Force of Habit. So it was rough. You had people that just weren't into this music, and some of them had their heads up their asses, but it was what I...
They all did.
One good thing I got out of Capitol Records was Rick and I ran almost head first, nose to nose, into Brooke Shields through Capitol Records, so that was awesome. We went to the Capitol 50th anniversary party, right? And we saw the guest list, and Brooke Shields is here. She's going to be here tonight. And me and Rick got wasted, and we were going around this whole party. Just, how you guys doing? We're looking for Brooke Shields. Looking for Brooke. Everywhere we go, we're looking for Brooke. And we couldn't find her anywhere, right? And so we go to take this picture with, Les Paul in the actual recording studio with all these different people, and we come out, we're looking where we're going, and bam, I run right into someone, I look up, it's fucking Brooke Shields. And we looked at each other and just started laughing. And she thought we were laughing right in her face, We would have been spent the last 6 hours looking for her. And I almost knocked her down. And she shot us the hardest looks for 20 feet, because we just kept walking and laughing and turning around and looking at her and laughing like we were laughing at her. But we were tickled pink that we finally found her.
That's Rick Hunold, your old guitar player you're talking about, right?
Exactly, yeah. And,
hey, Gary, she thought you were Fang. She thought you were like the song Going to Hollywood to fuck Brooke Shields.
Yeah, totally.
You should have invited her into your Blue Lagoon.
Hey, she's tall, too. I fucking almost went nose into tits. It was pretty cool.
Awesome. Woo! Probably the first time I ever heard about Exodus was from Metal Mania magazine. Let's go way back, man. Let's bring the listeners way back to the San Francisco Bay Area scene of the early 80s, if you guys can remember that far back. As a fan and writer, Ron, why don't you begin? Talk about the scene back then, the clubs, the fans, the whole vibe of the Bay Area scene.
Well, I met Bailoff at a Y&T gig. I mean, that was the only thing going on hard rock-wise locally in the early 80s, late 70s. And so Bailoff was always just this crazy headbanger who would have parties in the hills of Berkeley, him and some other buddies, and they'd play us Motorhead albums we had never heard or seen. And, he was a rager. I started the magazine, went to Europe, and came back to hear about this band Exodus. And my little buddy Bailoff was singing for him. We didn't know he could sing. Well, nobody did, and he never did. He was a screamer. So that was cool. When I got back, there was this band Exodus playing everywhere. That was nice. And they were always threatening to put out that first album. And what happened? Well, when Metallica took off to record their first album, they borrowed Exodus's manager, Mr. Mark Whitaker, and so Gary and Paul came to me and said, "Hey, you want to manage us?" And before I could say no, I was trying to manage them. Well, that only lasted a few weeks. I got beat up at too many parties by those guys. Hey, did you get us signed yet? Until Adam Segan came along and knew how to manage, and he was more of a masochist, so he managed well at least.
Certainly he was a glutton for punishment.
Oh man, wasn't he? But that's exactly what Exodus needed to get going, get that album out, and and it went, and that's when Todd came out from Torrid Records and signed you guys.
Yeah, I still talk to Todd all the time, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's still in the Exodus family. He actually got me a new phone recently.
All right. Say hi to Todd for me.
That's cool.
For those that don't know, Torrid Records was the original label. Bonded by Blood came out, and that went through Combat Records, correct? He signed a distribution.
Yeah, but they ended up. I think the original was distributed through Combat, and then they. He ended up just selling the rights of it to Combat, which Todd will tell you to this day was his biggest mistake because he got virtually nothing for it, and the album still sells, a copy. So
poor Todd, I didn't realize that.
Oh, it's one of those things, him and Ken Adams, and Todd Gordon, they were just a couple of young fans, starting their own label, and it wasn't that easy. Now it's so much easier to start a label. If you got a Mac in your house, it's a little Pro Tools rig, you can make the albums at home and, master them yourselves and just find some distribution. Back then, stuff was only available at places like the Record Vault and Record Exchange and stuff like that,
Is Bonded by Blood still available? Has it been reissued, the original?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at they have the new limited silver edition is what they call it. It's got a blue slipcase and the logo's embossed in silver, and I think it actually has multiple artworks in it. They did it with Pleasures and Fabulous Disaster as well. So yeah, the original's still available, which goes back to our earlier conversation. People calm down. The original's still available. It's actually out in a prettier package now. So.
Wow. Now, as far as Let There Be Blood, you're talking about your own labels. Is this Xaniz Records? Is that how you say it?
Records. Yeah, it's done through my former manager Steve Warner and his partner Johnny Zantz, son of Saul Zantz of Lord of the Rings and Amadeus fame, and we're doing it in partnership with them, although we've re-signed with Nuclear Blast, for all intents and purposes for what'll probably be the rest of my career because I'm not 21 years old anymore. But, this is a project we had in the works before we finalized and finished our record deal, and it's just something we wanted to keep for ourselves, It's in this business, there's not much that actually belongs to the artist, Typically, your songs, they're not even really yours anymore, but, the old material, we actually own the rights to all that stuff, so, we had no desire to, sign it away to anybody.
And talk about the old days. I got to give a plug to my good buddy Bill Hale. He's got a book coming out. In fact, Ron's involved in the book as well. I'm sure Will knows about it. It's called Metallica, The Club Days. And in this book, there's some great old Exodus pictures, or I should say pictures of Kirk when he was in Exodus. I don't know if you're aware of this, Gary.
It's cool that someone's doing another Metallica book, I guess, but, it's I'm not in any anxious hurry to run out and read it. I probably know all the stories.
Well, it's actually just a photo book.
I just wrote
the photo book. The world can see how ugly them guys were.
Great old pictures.
I just wrote the story for that. That's the apocalyptic March gigs at the Stone with Exodus and Law's Rocket.
Yep, I remember that one. That was a good night.
Yeah, I wrote a few chapters for Mr. Hale's new book, and so that should be out soon. And hopefully he's got tons of amazing pictures from back then, because they used to do Metal Rendezvous magazine down in Monterey. And
that's cool. I mean, nice someone doing it. Hope he makes a buck off those guys.
I think he might.
Just fucking No, that's totally cool. I mean, the one thing I do have myself, from the old days is photos. I've got like thousands of old pictures, and every couple of years I might pull out the big tub and look through them and get a few laughs.
Yeah, some great photos.
I got some crazy party pictures. They're nuts.
Let's do an Exodus book.
Yeah, this shit. We'll have to put that out ourselves, too.
Let's do it. I'm working on a Metal Mania book of all the old Metal Manias compiled together. So I'm hoping to have that out in the next year.
Well, I know Stransky's doing the same with Metal Rendezvous, because it's like a 25th anniversary. He was talking about actually doing something similar, too.
Oh, man, he's Mr. Perfection, Mr. Polished. He can do a great job, because I saw his Metal Rendezvous online, and it looks really good.
The funny thing on a serious note is I have actually been approached by someone about the possibility in the next year of doing an Exodus book, but if I'm going to do a book, it's got to be a tell-all, and I don't know if the rest of the world or the rest of the band's ready for that yet.
We're ready for it. Why don't you tell us some more stories like the Brooke Shields story? You got any other cool stories?
Well, I got so many of them. It's like, you have to go through the mental Rolodex of stories to even find them. I mean, there's just all, the Ron was there, Will certainly has seen our bad behavior, that's the one regret I always had was I think, Metallica always got all the credit. I'll use the word credit for, like, the band that drank so much booze. Man, I drank those guys under the table, so it's not even funny. We were dropping acid and doing everything else on top of all the...
Gary, you and Paul did more drugs than anyone in the whole scene that I can remember. At more parties, you guys thrashed more people and scared more people than all the other bands combined most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
I was amazed by your energy and Paul's energy. You guys could do anything.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's exactly what I heard. I mean, I obviously was in L.A., and Will was in L.A. at the time, but the rumors I heard, I never made it up to San Francisco in the early 80s for any of these shows. But everyone that I know in the Bay Area, including Ron, including Stransky, everyone was talking about you guys, particularly you and Paul, Gary, were just the ultimate partiers, and you were the heart of the whole Bay Area scene, where, like you say, a lot of people do credit Metallica as that, but as far as the killer parties and just the wildness, it was basically brought on by you and Paul.
It was a true left.
Paul and I, we were like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, I guess. We certainly could bring out the best in each other.
And the worst.
Together, we would just absolutely just inspire each other to greatness of, destruction and just mayhem. And, we had a lot of fun, at a lot of people's expense. But, I certainly believe that, we like set the bar really high as far as how far you could take a party.
And Will, have you made it out to back in those days? Did you go to any of those old club shows in San Francisco?
I went to quite a few, the Magui Gardens, the Stone on Broadway. So I was able to actually catch Exodus before they made their debut down in Los Angeles, because I remember that date distinctly.
The Country Club.
That's right, February 28, 1995.
I remember that show.
Great knowledge at me. Remembering dates and everything. God.
You still got your memory there, Gary.
No, I never had memory for dates like that. It's like, I have this game, Mental Meltdown. It's like the heavy metal board game, and it's got a bunch of Exodus stuff, and they're like, so that was Kurt's last show with Exodus. I didn't know. It's like someone like goes over and pulls out that card and throws that question at me, and I'm just, how am I supposed to know that?
Hey, that was our Metal Mania benefit. February 20th? No. March 19th would have been the last one, I guess, with Kirk. And you guys opened that show. You guys were, let's see, who headlined? Was it Law's Rocket?
I don't know. Where was it at?
Law's Rocket was big back then.
Yeah, where was the show at?
The Stone one. Do you remember some of the bands from back then?
The Ruffians, I don't know, Violins. Those are the bands I remembered.
I remember bands like Harvey and, I remember
Harvey.
Head On and
Head On, yes.
Head On. That's my buddy Howard Tieman's band. What's up, Howard?
Which one?
Head On. He was the drummer.
Oh, Head On. That was Frankie and Head On. Yeah, that's right.
Frank Wilsey. Frank Wilsey and Howard. And then Howard's brother was in a band called Road
Joe
Runner.
Perry.
Those guys were my old roommates.
And Violation.
Yeah.
Violation, that's right.
Yeah, poor man Schenker.
And
He was ripping the V. The blonde guy with the V, he was ripping.
Yeah,
was that Danny Gill?
No, Danny Gill. That was Guilt. And
Guilt.
that was his other band, yeah. No, I can't remember his name, the guy from Violation, but I used to rent his wireless whenever we do like big shows because, he's the only guy in Bay Area who had a wireless, the early 80s.
Yeah, they had a single.
He was the nicest guy, yeah. That's the thing I like most about the club scene back then is, we'd go out to a different club every night and not see the same band twice, and I miss those days. I miss, the old Waldorf and, Wolfgangs and Mubure and Broadway and the Stone and Ruthie's and Keystone Berkeley and Palo Alto and and it was so awesome, especially the old Waldorf, man, that was so good.
All right.
That was a fun place.
I want to hear about this, and a lot of people are so curious because, as you say, Ron and Gary, there were a lot of bands just prior to when thrash metal hit, when Exodus and Metallica basically took over the Bay Area, but you had bands like, Head On, Hans Noddy, Anvil Chorus, Violation, Y&T, of course, for years. How was it when you guys came on playing thrash metal? Because it was almost, I wouldn't say a glam scene like LA was, but it was kind of that Van Halen-ish kind of scene out there. When you guys came
It was everywhere.
That's your question, then I'm going to give you a world-class Hans Noddy story, all right?
Hans Noddy.
When thrash hit, we just went to all these different metal band shows. We were total best friends with everybody from like Anvil Chorus and stuff, and it wasn't really a big difference. We all liked the same metal, so it wasn't like it was like, segregated, musically back then, so
It was just metal or not.
Right.
Yeah, it was just metal or not. We went, that's how I know Head On. They were like a glam band, but we went because that's where the girls were, They
Yep.
weren't at an Exodus Metallica show. They were all there to see that, 17-year-old blonde singer they had. And we were there happy to, try to gather some of his scraps, But, it was just an awesome time, A good time, and so I look back really fondly on it all.
Yeah, there was no varying shades of metal. There was not 10 different styles. There was just metal or posers, according to Bailoff.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We listened to everything from, stuff like Legend and all those other bands, and of course like Diamond Head and Angel Witch and Venom and Merciful Fate and all that. A lot of it. First time I ever heard it was on Ron's radio show. The old Merciful
KUSF.
were so awesome.
Yeah, we were blasting it out from 82 on, and I think it influenced a lot of people, and pretty soon a lot of other radio shows started popping up that would play just metal for, an hour or two in the middle of the night some weekends. And I'm still doing it 6 years later.
Dude, that is so awesome, man. That is so cool to hear. That's something I did want to mention. KUSF, one thing I forgot to mention, that was Ron's, basically you did the metal show there, the overnight. You're the one that brought Metallica in, doing all those interviews at night. You really brought on the whole thrash metal scene, Ron. You started playing all the new wave of British heavy metal bands. You were a big force in creating that scene.
Yeah, we played everything from punk to metal and everything in between, and I'm sure a lot of people got somewhat influenced, but it was a huge morphing project. Everyone was influenced by everyone else, and it slowly mutated into various degrees of metal.
Yeah, people have asked, being the past, what was one of the primary differences between Metallica and Exodus, and I always said, we all love the same metal, same bands, just we loved different ones more than the other. Metallica, obviously, it was all about Diamond Head, and Exodus, it was more about Venom and Merciful Fate, Well, we all loved those bands, but we just gravitated to certain favorites,
Good point. Ron, is your show, I know a lot of people ask, is the KUSF show available on the internet where people could hear it worldwide?
Yeah, it's KUSF.org.
There you go, guys.
And you click on live anywhere, click on Listen Now, and you can listen to Rampage Radio. Of course, it's 2 to 8 a.m. Saturday nights, which I know everybody will be asleep.
Well, that's Pacific time, so people overseas would...
2 in the afternoon to 8 at night? Perfect.
Yeah, we get those calls from Europe. They're listening in the afternoon, or Japan, they're listening that night, or, it's great. The internet has really helped. It's really made it really fun.
Dude, I'm lucky if I make it up to watch the Colbert Report at night. That's my mission every weeknight, is to make it up to the Daily Show and Colbert Report, then I go to bed.
Well, dude, when we go out, Gary, we're going to pull an all-nighter just like back in the old days. Gary and I are neighbors now.
Hey, I have not gone a night without sleep in like almost 6 years now, and I plan to keep it that way.
Congratulations, Gary.
It feels good to sleep. Sleep was highly underrated.
You got a lot of catching up to do.
I'm pretty well caught up, but, so, yeah.
Well, Gary, you're not getting away from us without telling that story. What's the Hans Noddy story?
All right, okay. You mentioned Hans Noddy, and it always brings up probably my single greatest favorite Exodus story. And this is back way in the early days. This was when Paul was singing, but Kirk was still in the band. And we go to this recording studio in Richmond, Starlight Studios, for this party they're having. And it's myself, Tom, Kirk Hammett, Paul Bailoff, and our old manager, Mark Myrick. And we were in Mark's big station wagon he had. That its one greatest feature was you could put a pony keg in the spare tire place in the back and cover it with just the spigot coming out. So, we drive around with a keg in the thing and hidden. And we go to this party and there's garbage cans full of champagne, and we just get wasted. Jeff Andrews is there too, and he knocks over a partition into some drums, and we're stealing bottles of champagne. We're like carrying these things out to the car and just loading them up in our keg spot. And Barbie Benton is there, right? You mentioned in Playboys, she's there. I don't know why, and we're just so fucked up, right? And I'm sneaking out champagne, and I dropped a couple of bottles right out from my jacket, right in front of everybody, and but the story gets really crazy when somehow or another, after we start dropping the stolen bottles, we figure it's time to leave, and there was this really hot black girl there, and we convinced her to come outside and get in the car with us, and we're gonna go party. And she's like, no, I can't go. Nah, come on, you're going. And we won't let her go, right? And she goes, you better let me out, or Boulder's going to get really mad. Who the fuck's Boulder? We don't care about Boulder. And all of a sudden, here comes Boulder, right? This motherfucker is about 6'6" and about 375 pounds, dude. He's a mountain, right? And he comes up, and she's in the car, up between the front seat, between Jeff Andrews, who's in the passenger seat, and Mark Myrick, who's driving. And he reaches in, tries opening the door, and Jeff Andrews reaches his foot over and punches the gas. Next thing you know, we're dragging Boulder from this car, right? And, for about 30, 40 feet, and he just goes plummeting off on the road. And she's like, Boulder's going to kill you guys. And you find out and just out of the blue, Bailoff goes, fuck that, we're Hans Noddy, and we ain't afraid of nobody. and so we completely started running with it. Yeah, you tell him to show up at the next Hans Noddy show. We'll kick his big ass. And we ended up, she had to go pee, and she totally has no idea where she is. We're in Richmond someplace, and she gets out of the pee, and we leave her, right, and we take off. And it seemed to coincide with the last Hans Noddy show, because I never saw them again after that. And I'm sure that Boulder had something to do with it. I don't know.
Well, they moved to L.A. Didn't we trade them for Metallica? Didn't San Francisco trade him?
That's probably why they moved to L.A.
Yeah.
I think because she wasn't that drunk, and I think the only thing she could possibly remember is that we screamed at her that we're Hans Noddy and we're afraid of nobody for an hour. And so fake Van Halen probably they fled to L.A. for their lives. I don't know. You had to have been there. It was really funny though.
Will, what was your experience going to San Francisco as opposed from the L.A. club scene of the early '80s, the big glam scene, and then going up to San Francisco to catch Exodus?
Bands like Exodus, it was definitely a thrill to see bands outside of Los Angeles. We had the harder edge bands here and there, but that, like Agent Steel, Dark Angel, what have you. But it was more of a bigger scenario, either taking the bus or riding with someone who drove up to the Bay Area or getting dropped off, whatever the case may be, because you would not see a lot of this heavier stuff too much down in Los Angeles. So when I got to see bands like Exodus, the Blue Gardens, the Stone, places that we've mentioned already, it was a really big deal. It was a real brotherhood going to these shows, seeing the vests, seeing the shirts. People were into it, waiting in line, hanging out with the bands afterwards, the keg parties. Some cases, sneaking in, because when you're underage, you have to sort of roll the dice of, all right, I'm going to see this band no matter what. Got a lot of trouble with it from time to time, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it because you were there at the beginning. You were seeing these bands in the early stages, and it's hard to translate to younger kids these days because they can sort of flip on the computer, check out YouTube, check out a MySpace page, and see an up-and-coming band now. Different story then. Different story.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Thing, Slayer, Metallica, Exodus, these bands in their early stages. And hanging out with them, that was a bigger deal. You got to hang out with them. It wasn't about gold, platinum, and silver packages to meet the bands after the show. You got to hang out with the bands, sit on their Marshalls, hang out with them by their trucks with the loading the gear, and come back and party. You don't get that, Dave. You just don't get that. And I'll never trade that ever again. But I will say a few thrashed keggers, little raging, little lesson in violence to take that song tilt.
I mean, yeah, those were some good times. I mean, everything got crazy, and yeah, there's always a party after the show. No one ever, we didn't ever do a show back then, and everybody went home. It's like the party is on. I'm like, I remember being at this girl Crystal's house, and go downstairs, and there's Paul Bailoff with a baseball bat just hammering away on the support beam. And I had to let him know that if he has any success at what he was endeavoring to do, he was going to collapse a ceiling on top of his own head. And so he kind of stopped once he realized that success equals death. The more you succeed, the less likely it is you will survive this. It was nuts. I mean, I remember going to some just legendary San Francisco parties after some of the Metallica Exodus shows, and back when Dave was still in Metallica, and just completely just getting out of control. It was good shit,
Well, I think that attributes a lot to the success of thrash metal, and why it's so big today is the connection the bands had with the fans. Like you said, it was always a party with the fans. It was like you guys were fans. You weren't separate from the fans.
In the Bay Area, we knew 90% of everybody in the crowd. They were our friends. They weren't. We literally could look down and we knew the whole front row by name. I mean, in my photo collection, my most prized photo I have is a picture of me from Wolfgang's, and the front row is James Hetfield, Cliff Burton, my friend Ronnie Schwartz, who passed away, of course Cliff, and Rich Birch, about 15 feet back, and about another 5 friends of mine. But, that photo has 2 of, my closest friends back then, all gone. 3, I'm sorry. And that's that's how it was every show,
Oh, you need to post that. I want to see that.
I'll have to, it's buried in a bunch of shit, but I'll have to pull it out and scan it. Cliff in full bang, right? His hair is when you'd catch him in that bang, and his hair is standing, straight up. James, you can't see his face. He's front row just pounding the stage, and you could see this, Rich, the amazing thing is he almost looks like a specter, image, he's kind of back. And if you knew him, you could tell it's him, There was just kind of standing about 20 feet back watching, but it's a great picture.
Wow.
The true headbangers, as Paul Bailoff or Rich Birch used to say. The trues.
For sure. I mean, it was Rich who introduced me to Paul,
Same here.
We were at Alvarado Park, playing one of those little outdoor parties we used to play, sponsored by Joe's Variety, which was a liquor store / head shop. And he came down, and Laws Rocket played. And the funny thing is, I remember Laws Rocket the first time I met them, and they were scared to death, because they'd never ventured down from their little Berkeley Hills sanctuary. They come down into Richmond, into the ghetto, and there were all these bikers spinning donuts in the parking lot. They thought they told Paul later that they thought they might get their equipment stolen. It's like, come on, these are our friends who are not gonna steal your shit. They're a little rough around the edges, but that's Exodus. And Rich introduced me to Paul, and that was also the first day I ever heard Angel Witch, another band that helped shape my musical being.
Oh, yeah.
Paul would say, "You guys are raging."
Yeah, we got a rage, bro.
Paul liked to pack a lot. I remember getting pile drive by him at obviously one of the parties, but man, that guy, he could have been a linebacker for the Raiders.
Paul is one of the strongest guys I ever know. And what a lot of people don't know, the guy, was like an amazing athlete. I mean, you see him towards the later years, even when he had that big belly, the guy was hard like a rock, and in the early days, that guy, you go bowling, he'd routinely bowl like a 250, 270.
Whoa.
He'd bowl a 250 just almost every time,
Whoa, I'm glad I didn't bowl Paul.
Baseball is amazing. He's throwing, some real heat, good curveball, basketball. Him and I used to shoot hoop all the time. Football, he's just an all-around great athlete, good tennis player, great skateboarder,
Yeah, I'd say Paul was the most intense guy I might have ever met.
Nah, he's awesome.
He was an amazing guy. He had a good sense of humor. He was definitely one of the coolest guys you would ever meet. And when he was into something, he was into metal, he was 100% into it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was more metal than anybody I've ever known, without a doubt, he'd go into his air guitar bit, and he always had that thumb sticking straight out, and he had those thumbnails sharpened to these wolf talons, and he'd have that thing out, and then he'd come up air guitar and he'd just poke you with that thumbnail. And I swear, I mean, he'd go right between your ribs and he'd come and just dab that thing in on you. It was crazy.
Smash it! That was his favorite thing to say.
Smash it. Smash everything. There's nothing unsmashed.
He kind of started a lot of the, I wouldn't say violence, but the aggressiveness of the Bay Area and the whole metal scene. I mean, here we got a lot from the punk scene in L.A., which kind of crossed over, but a lot of it came from Paul Bailoff and the aggressiveness of of the metal.
Don't kid yourself. It was all about violence.
Not only that, when you hear that, it was taken serious. You know, kill the posers, kill the posers.
In the back of the club would start looking around and all of a sudden a light hit them and everybody's looking at them. I mean, if you look at some of those old Exodus pictures, from the early 80s, 85 stuff, you'd see Paul, I would have it, but Paul, to a much greater extent than me, would have all these scraps of shirts tied around his wrist. You just, to the casual observer, it would just look like some wristbands, but what they were scraps of poser T-shirts that we would go up to posers with and we'd pull out a knife and we'd dude, I'm gonna cut that shirt right off you right now, or I'll do it with you wearing. Give it. And they were like badges of honor. We would slice these long strips off the dude's own Rat shirt or, Motley Crue or whatever. We'd tie it around our wrists, and we'd keep it. And, Paul did it more than anybody. As you can see, he had about 4 solid inches of thick fucking T-shirt scraps tied around his arm, It's a funny thing, all of us guys who always whipped on all these poser bands, us guitar players, at the same time, we secretly coveted all of Warren DeMartini and George Lynch's riffs, so.
The secret comes out.
We certainly knew how fucking good those two guys were. We're like, fuck that. But
I think everyone did that back then. I mean, I certainly did. I mean, there were a lot of bands in LA, especially living in LA, and just the lifestyle they had. Again, talking about the parties you had. I mean, I occasionally went to, parties, and I'm sure Will has too in LA with, after shows with Rat or Motley Crue or later some of the other glam bands. And it was just all posers. Everyone was too cool. The band was too cool. They would only let chicks hang out with them or go in their room. It was like you're going there and you're like, what the fuck am I doing at this party? Whereas you would go party with the guys with Armored Saint or something. It was just everyone just having a good time, getting drunk and having fun. And I assume that's how it was with, the shows in the Bay Area too.
Okay. The amazing thing is, and I know Ron will remember this as well, is we had plenty of posers in the Bay Area who were some of our best friends. We considered them on the protected list,
Okay.
Bob St. Laurent and, all these guys from Head On, Frank, and stuff.
Frankie's
we had
awesome.
those guys all the time, and we absolutely loved him. And Bob was as big of an animal as any of us, yet, he was about 6'6" and 4 inches of that was hair,
Wow.
You know, but those guys are our friends, you know, because, you know, personality-wise, we were like just, you know, peas in a pod, you know, even though they played in hair bands.
I think we were much luckier up north, though. I mean, I felt sorry for people from L.A. I mean, they had a definite disadvantage because everything was always so, you know, glammy down there, sure, and so commercial that any true headbanger would have had a tough time trying to find like-minded people, I mean, it seems like, down in L.A.
Well, again, that's why Metallica moved up to the Bay Area. They were having a real tough time. I mean, everyone talks to me about, God, those Metallica shows in L.A., you saw their very first shows. That must have just been unreal. You must have got... And it's like, no, not really. You know, they played in front of like less than 20 people, and people weren't into them at all. And, you know, that's how it was like. And it was really hard to get respect in L.A. Playing, especially as a real heavy hardcore metal band, you know.
The funny thing, it was Rat who like gave them a lot of their early shows down there too. It's really funny. They actually did get some respect out of one of the very bands we would later claim to be on the enemy list, you know.
Well, Rat were a bit heavier back then, you know. Rat and
I mean, I love that. And I always have, you know. But the whole Killer Poser thing, you know, Killer Poser let Satan sort them out, you know.
And that was a real strong part of it, too, because especially in the early 80s, bands like Metallica playing the clubs, those shows were really hard to come by. Obviously, the attendance wasn't as strong as, say, it would be now, but back then, they were really, really hard to come by. And Ron, you hit on a really strong point. That's what was sold to kids outside of Los Angeles, the glam scene, hair bands, and so forth. But we did have the heavier bands coming along as the years went on. But L.A. was known for, you know, the bands that would play the Troubadour, the Roxy, the Whiskey. It was always hair bands. You open a band magazine, hair bands. What do you see? Gradually, you'd see Slayer, you'd see Dark Angel, Agent Steel came along, Holy Terror, you know, bands like that. But that was later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know Brian Slagle's, you know, New Heavy Metal Review magazine was, you know, it was more commercial, but luckily he started Metal Blade, which definitely helped the LA scene metal-wise, because those bands are a lot heavier than most of the LA scene. He signed the better bands, you know, starting with Slayer and but other bands like Abattoir would come up, or Savage Grace, or, you know, good bands.
Well, you know, Will points out, too, in L.A., it was very difficult to get shows, and most of the shows were for the glam bands, because they were the ones that would draw really well. I grew up in Orange County, in Huntington Beach. In those days, a lot of those heavier bands, Metallica played, you know, I used to see them at the Radio City, Concert Factory, Woodstock. Those three clubs in Orange County catered to Slayer, played all those shows. And, you know, Orange County bands like Leather Wolf and stuff like that as well. But you also had bands like Savage Grace, Abattoir. A lot of those bands would come down, exactly, to play Orange County. Because at the time, Roxy wasn't really doing much. They were doing plays. Whiskey was closed for like a year or two. And the
it was?
Yeah, the Whiskey was closed after like Saxon and Metallica played there.
They closed it.
yeah, they closed. There was a period, you remember, Will, for about a couple years, up until like 1986, they reopened the Whiskey. They totally remodeled it or something.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, it was. That you refreshed my memory on that. You're right. You are correct. For me,
where would you go?
For me,
for metal.
For me, in San Fernando Valley, it was a country club.
Country club, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
in Woodland Hills?
I mean, to play the country club was like a huge thing back then, I remember, you know.
First time in L.A. was country club. And we were so stoked, you know, we had built it up to be something that it wasn't, but, you know, the show could never live up to what the idea we had in our minds. Oh, we're playing the country club. It's going to be awesome. And like, yeah, you know, get me back to roofies, please.
Yeah, also, too, in that period, you know, word of mouth was key. All the magazines, that's where you saw most of the coverage. It was word of mouth. You know, there was no internet, really. All about through the tape trading circuit, that's how we found out about these shows. Flyering, of course, was part of it as well, but it was that, again, going back to what I said really early on, is that brotherhood. You see guys wearing the same shirts, the vest, the denim leather. You know you're part of something. And
the shirts and the vest, it was almost kind of like some secret handshake, you know. It's like, you know,
right.
You'd see somebody you'd never met before, but, you know, if the guy had a vest, back then with a Motorhead patch, you know that you could go up and he's going to be your bro, you know?
That's how I met Will, I believe, and everyone I know. I used to wear a jacket with Motorhead and Saxon, and there were only a few people there. I think Will, I met him actually at might have been like a Malice show or something. That was...
Malice. Wow.
Malice. Wow. Now,
they were early.
Now, wearing a metal shirt, is no, open invite to, strike up a conversation, because, the person wearing it could very well be a douche, It's like, but, back then, it's like, you were such a part of, like, an exclusive fraternity, You saw a guy, and if a guy had, like, a homemade vest, because, of course, they weren't back patches. He painted that shit, And if you saw a guy and had this, like, hand-painted Saxon across the back of his jacket, that dude,
I did that, too. I painted logos on the back of my nylon jacket.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, my denim vest, the early one, I had Paul Bailoff's ex-girlfriend, Lizzie, do the back because she was such an amazing artist. So, she painted the logo on the back of my vest and did Paul's and did everybody's,
What, the original bonded blood cover where it's just your shadows?
No, she did the original logo where the X had the little slash and it looked kind of like Kurtzel on the
guitar. Yes, yes.
I had that one. I wish I still had it, actually.
Oh, that would go in a museum.
I still have mine. Like, it's still crusty. It still has, like, Baron Rojo on it and Tank and Trust. And,
yeah.
All right.
That's how you discover bands, right, William?
What's that?
You'd read somebody's patches. Oh, who's this band? Who's A to Z? Who's this band? Who's Witchfind?
Absolutely. You wouldn't put that.
I used to get that all the time. Even with Motorhead back then. What is Motorhead? Does that mean you work on cars?
Because you look at it like a band had to have some sort of quality and status to have finally graduated to the point of being included on someone's vest, Right. You didn't put no crap on there, If you put it on there, there was a reason that shit was on there. And you better go find out who this band is because they must be good because someone put them right on the front of their vest,
And a lot of them were from overseas in England or Europe, and so they were really obscure.
Yeah, that's how I got all my patches, by reading Kerrang, by reading all these different fanzines because I couldn't find anything locally, excluding like Blue Meania Records. But I put them on my patch to represent. But it was a big deal for me then, and it was something that made me proud to say this is the type of music that I like, type of music that I've always never strayed away from, and even to this day, it's all in my collection. I've never gotten rid of any of it. It's a ritual, It's a rite of passage.
The William Howell Metal Museum.
You wore it on the Get Thrash movie, Will.
And those albums from back then, they're still my favorite to listen to, and I listen to a lot of more modern bands, but you're more
legend.
You hit it on the nail there, Gary. All those classic new wave of British heavy metal albums, those classic the original Bond by Blood, all those albums, they still hold today, even more so.
I'll listen to UFO before I listen to anything modern on most given days.
Absolutely.
Those are the records I still have. And I still have the vinyl. Of all this old stuff. And
70s UFO, yes.
Shanker.
Shanker!
To this day, I'm still cursing Michael's name simply because when they played Deer on the Green, and I was so excited, Shanker, UFO, and that was when Michael went on one of his disappearing fucking psycho binges, and then I go, that's not Michael, it was Paul Chapman, But we just played a festival this summer with UFO, and it was great because, I got to finally meet, Phil Mogg and Pete Way and Paul Raymond and Andy Parker, and best thing
was Shanker playing?
No, it was
Vinny Moore, right?
Oh. But the funny thing is, Pete Way, the band has him on a no booze before he plays thing, and he come up, I'm like, me and Lee are total fanboys. I'm fucking Pete Way, and he's like, you guys wouldn't happen to have a little shot or some vodka or something? Like, yeah, we got you covered. Whatever poison you need, we'll just ruin it for you, band. We don't care. Him, no, fucking Pete Way wants some heroin, and we'll find it for him.
Pete Way can't even play in the United States now. Every time they tour here,
it totally sucks. But they were fucking amazing. They were so good.
I have a great Pete Way story.
Let's hear it.
It's Pete and Andy Parker. They were going to be our very first guests on KUSF Rampage Radio in March of 1982, March 3rd. I remember they were playing in the city the day before, And we got their number, and we kept calling them, and they kept going, yeah, we'll play. We'll come up there and talk if you can get us something. And we couldn't get them the right something, and they never made it.
You got to dangle that carrot to get the gods.
You got to dangle that carrot.
You want to talk to the gods, you got to pay homage.
Yeah, you got to get what they want.
You gotta wave the proper things on the altar for the gods to show.
Yeah, that was 82, and I don't think they ever changed.
You know what hasn't changed is that Phil Mogg's voice is still one of the greatest ever.
Absolutely.
So amazing, and we were all standing on the side of the stage just a bunch. By this time, we had played a few hours earlier, and by this time, we're just a drunken mess. And I'm talking about us and 3 inches of blood and our whole respective crew, you know, and we're just standing there teetering back and forth this way. You know, as a matter of fact, I went to get a beer during the set and took a slide down this wet ramp and just covered in mud. You know, I didn't care, you know. You know, I went and changed my clothes, came back. What happened to you? Fell in the mud. By the end of the show, we're like really drunk. Dude, we love you guys. But they were absolutely perfectly cool, and they smiled right through us drunken fucking stupidity.
Well, guys, we could go on forever just bullshitting and talking, but I guess we should probably wind it down here. Was there anything you guys want to add or any other great stories?
Who should we start with?
You go for it.
Ask me a question about anybody. I'll throw one at you.
All right.
Give me an Anvil Chorus story.
Oh, Anvil Chorus. Let's see. Well, they worshipped Yngwie, and they helped him out on his first big solo show at
Anvil Chorus, the backup band at Wolfgang's.
Remember that? That was an amazing show.
Played, I think it was Exodus and Anvil Chorus Yngwie, wasn't it, that night?
Right before it burned down, too, I think. And that was a great nightclub.
Yeah, I mean that was
it was huge.
Rick Hunold's first gig with Exodus when we supported Loudness at Wolfgang's.
Oh, at the Stone, or that was Wolfgang's?
Wolfgang's, yeah. I remember because Rick, who later went on to be one of the most dynamic stage presences ever. You know, it's like that was his first show with the band and in front of a sold out crowd. So he played the whole show facing like the side of the stage. You know, not looking at the crowd. He was so scared.
Whoa, is he playing right now?
I don't know. I haven't talked to Rick in quite some time. Tom's seen him, and I know he had told him that he was making some new music, and I think he's jamming with Greg Christian from Testament, and I heard it's really heavy stuff. So hopefully, the world will see more of Rick Hunold soon.
Well, we're hoping everyone reforms in their original version. I just saw Blind Illusion with Mark Biederman and his new band, and they were excellent.
How's Mark?
And they just opened for Uli last week. Uli Roth played, and I heard Lee Altus got attacked in Concord by the bouncers at the Concord show for Uli.
He got kicked out?
Yeah, and they were hassling him there.
Couldn't have. I don't know. I talked to him right when you called and left a message on my phone, and he never mentioned it. He was actually picture messaging me pictures of Uli and saying, "Oh, he's God." He never mentioned getting kicked out, and he told me how great the show was. So
he was trying to pay his beer tab. I was reading this on Earth Dog, and the bouncers attacked him and his wife, basically. And Mr. Metal Tom Christie saved him by jumping on some of the bouncers last week at Concord.
I didn't hear about that.
You're going to have to ask Lee about that.
Yeah,
Lee's the mellowest guy in rock.
Yeah, but Lee, though, when Lee gets drunk...
Oh, he's a mad Russian sometimes, isn't he?
He's a mad Russian, yeah. Well, he's the happiest drunk until you piss him off and get him mad. And then he's the one, he'll stand there like spit on people and shit, yeah. So, it could have been one of those things where, Lee was drunk and someone tried to tell him they had to do something and maybe he just didn't want to do it. I don't know, and if someone gets in his face, Lee will be like, "Fuck you, motherfucker!"
Especially when he's had a few, too many.
My next call is to Lee for sure.
All right, guys. Well, any closing statements there, Will or Ron or Gary?
Yeah, so this was awesome. This made my day.
We got to do this again, man. We should all do this again for another podcast. podcast. I just wanted to do this, like free-for-alling. It turned out awesome, guys. Thanks again for being a part
Oh,
of
this is way cool.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I mean, I think the beauty of it is that, we're all still here. We're all doing our different things, but still doing the spirit of metal in any way, shape, or form.
Well, there you go. Classic stuff, man. That, once again, was Gary Holt from Exodus. Ron Quintana, who does Rampage Radio on KUSF. Check it out at KUSF.org. And, of course, William Howell, DJ Will. You can check him out at KNAC.com. He does the show The Vault on Sunday mornings. Want to thank all three of our great guests. Once again, man, an incredible episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'm sure you guys did. Please send me those emails. Let me know what you guys thought of it. Once again, my email address is shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. You can also check out the MySpace page, myspace.com/Skull Sessions. Although, as I mentioned before, I don't do much with that page, but you could respond to me there or at myspace.com/shockwaveshardradio. I'm not a big MySpace guy, but I will respond to your emails through MySpace as well as my regular email address. So please send those responses, and don't forget to spread the word, man. Tell everyone you know about the Shockwave Skull Sessions. Go on iTunes too. We are on iTunes. Write those reviews on iTunes and all the other directories out there. I got some great stuff coming up. As you guys might have known, I don't even recall if I mentioned on the last podcast, I just moved back to LA, so I'm kind of going crazy, unpacking everything and kind of getting myself situated. But what I had done, I was anticipating this move, so I had recorded several Skull Sessions interviews over the past month, and I'm still getting caught up on those. So we're going to try to get the next Skull Sessions episodes up weekly, hopefully every Tuesday. At least for the next few episodes, we'll have a new one posted. We do have a great AC/DC debate with Ed Rivadavia and John Bush. That'll be coming up real soon. We also have a great conversation with Rob Blasco from Ozzy. He also has his management company, Mercenary Management, along with Unearthed vocalist Trevor Phipps. And Trevor also has his own label called Ironclad Recordings. So that'll be coming up soon. We also have a great Uriah Heep debate coming up very shortly. So lots of good stuff, guys. Thanks once again for your support. Be sure to contact me at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. Don't forget to check us out on the Classic Metal Show, too. Check out the classicmetalshow.com or cmsradio.net, and it'll tell you the times where you could hear the Shockwave Skull Sessions on the Classic Metal Show. Thanks once again. Keep those emails coming. We'll talk to you soon.